Hello, my name is Dan Perera, your host for the Rise Youth Ministry podcast. Here we'll be addressing the different struggles youth face when it comes to living out the Christian faith. We hope to really inspire you, giving you the tools you need to help you discover the person God created you to be. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Rise Youth Ministry podcast. My name is Dan Perera and I'm the Youth Ministry Coordinator here at St. Benedict. And I'm pretty excited about this episode of this podcast today because I'm joined by the lovely, the beautiful Mrs. Rissa Perera. She's actually my wife, so I get to say all those beautiful things about her. So Rissa, it's my pleasure to have you on this episode of the podcast. Maybe, it'll take a couple of minutes and you can introduce yourself, tell us a bit about yourself, who you are, your favorite thing about Dan, if you want to. How we met, I don't know, anything your heart desires.
I think that list would be too long if I started talking about my favorite things about you. So,
I'm blushing. Can you tell?
Yes, I can. My name is Rissa. Actually, my full name is Corissa, and I'm originally from Gatineau in Quebec. My family and I moved in the Maritimes when I was about 11 or 12. So I actually grew up also in the Maritimes, and I moved to Halifax about 7 years ago or so. And so, that would have been, we would have met, I think, 3 years ago now, or something like that. Has it been that long?
What year is this? 2022?
Yeah, what year is this? I don't know.
It
would have
3
been
years ago.
Something like that. Yeah, so I wouldn't have met you if I didn't move here.
It's just crazy.
Praise God.
All the way from Gatineau to Halifax. What are the odds? And then here I am from Sri Lanka all the way to Halifax.
That's so true, eh? Imagine.
Yeah, well, more so Canada, but yeah. Crazy times. So people ask us about our story, and I always say, we're the typical couple that met at church, but I don't think that's entirely the story, is it?
Well, we met at a mass we were both helping music for at St. Mary's University here in Halifax. And it just so happened that I wasn't working that day, and so when they asked if I was free for music, I came down, and you were there. That was the first time I met you, although I was already doing music with the group at the Basilica, downtown Halifax. So we would have met there. Mm-hmm. And I would say that we really started hitting it off when we started hanging out a lot with you started inviting me to a lot of the things you and your friends did.
Right.
And that's when I think, for me anyways.
I got you in the club.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, you invited me to all the things. It was fun. And that's when we spent the most time.
Yeah.
Totally.
What's funny about it though is that we met on campus, but both of us weren't actual students. We just got called to come do music at a mass, and we responded. We answered the call. And now we're married. Look at that. Yeah. Time flies. Yeah. That's just the short version
the short version
for a long story. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, let's jump into the topic tonight. So today I want to talk about dating and relationships, which is also why I have my beautiful wife joining me on this episode in particular. So let's jump right into it. So when you think of dating and relationships, dating generally can be a very daunting thing. It's like what are the do's and don'ts? Like what works, what doesn't? Is there a time that I should be dating? Like should I be dating in high school or elementary? Or even for people who graduate high school and come out of high school, they're like should I be focusing on my studies? Should I be looking for somebody, a potential spouse? Like what does that look like, right? So I want to talk about a couple of things today. Two different aspects of dating. One, kind of relationships in school, like elementary, high school, but also kind of talking about relationships like post high school, like what does that look like for someone who might be in a relationship, right? Mm-hmm. I guess to kick us off, Rissa, if you want to share a little bit about your experience in high school. Did you have any relationships, like friendships or any romantic relationships? Like what did that look like for you?
Yeah, definitely. So for me, I did have a pretty significant relationship, I would say, in high school, 11th and 12th grade, someone that I had met in school. I didn't grow up Catholic. I didn't grow up in the faith at all. I wasn't Christian. I actually considered myself an atheist. So for me, I wasn't really it wasn't so much of a big topic, I think, as it is like in the Christian faith, because it was just so normal to just date. That's just kind of, it just felt like that's what you did. And I think the secular world does kind of portray it that way. But for me, I was dating someone because I did feel that we did fall in love, even at that age. And so it was a beautiful relationship we had. There were struggles because we were still learning like who we were by a lot. And so, of course, it obviously didn't stick because we're together. Surprise!
Spoilers.
Yeah, no. No, and then obviously it ended because I was struggling through some things and I didn't know myself well enough to be in a relationship. So not to say that it wasn't, also a beautiful relationship, but
Sure.
I could definitely say that we weren't. I don't think we were ready. It was it was hard. Yeah.
Yeah, and I imagine it's hard too because, well, this has just been my experience. Like being in high school, I don't even know who I am. I'm trying to figure out what it means to, well, first of all, to exist, and then secondly, in regards to my faith, I'm just like I just had found my faith in my last year of high school, and so kind of juggling all of that and trying to figure out where I was like where I fit in all of this in regards to my faith, but also as a guy finishing off high school, and the last thing I was even thinking about or would have been thinking about would have been like a relationship of any sorts. And I find too, even younger than that, like elementary for example, I find you don't really know what like I think just going back, like the word love can be such a word that's thrown around, right? But like to actually love somebody, what does that mean, right? And so with somebody who might be in elementary and kind of trying, like wanting to jump in a relationship, I guess my question is that the most prudent thing at the time, right?
I think it makes me think while you were saying that. I remember finishing my high school and just kind of figuring out who I was. Like I was just forming my identity, and yes, I wasn't Christian yet, so I didn't know my real identity in Christ. But I was just starting to form my dislikes, my hobbies, like figuring out what I even like to do, and forming like my person. And so when you talk about that, I think it's that tough time in high school when you're just trying to figure out who you are and what you want in life.
Definitely. And not to say that, like, if you are somebody who is dating in high school, or you might be in elementary, with somebody, who you like, and you ask them out or whatever, and you find yourself in a relationship, I think that's okay. But I just want to come back to the why, right? I think if our end goal, especially in the Christian context of dating, is to eventually discern and think about marriage. I find at a young age, as young as, like 10 years old, 10, 11 years old, you're not necessarily thinking about marriage at that age, right? And so, and not to say that, like I've heard of so many couples, who met in high school and now are married, like those high school sweethearts, right? That are now married and have beautiful kids and families of their own, right? And it's not to say that God can't use a circumstance or a situation to bring about something beautiful and fruitful. But I guess going back to, like, is it prudent, right? Because prudency is just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. Yeah. Right. So what are your thoughts on that, Rissa?
Yeah. When you talk about prudency, all I kept thinking about was kind of like involving God in it, like putting God at the center. I mean, we're always called to put God at the center. So if we do the same thing with a relationship, it's like, what's my intention behind dating this person? So I think, like when you're really young, like you said, 10, 11, like when you're that age, really, like it's just kind of just for fun, it's like you're starting to like boys, you're starting to like girls, and that's just kind of, it's that fun period, like it's that butterflies in your stomach kind of thing, right? When you're really young, like maybe not even 10, like maybe 13 or whatever. I think it was 13 for me anyways. And that's fun. And then as you get older, you're finding your relationship with God, maybe. But even if you're not, you are thinking about, like, what do I desire for myself? And I think you should remember that. Like, what's the intention behind this relationship? Like, why am I with this person? Is it genuine? Do I care for them? Can I love them? And love in the sense of like, not just the gooey feeling in your heart that's like thrown around really in now society, but am I able to love them, like care for them, and do they matter? Like, can I make them a priority? All those things, right?
And that's a good point. Yeah, it's like the what am I actually feeling? Is this just because I want to be with this person, or do I actually love? And I think you need to almost define what love means to you, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Because I think that in itself can get pretty messy too if you're jumping in a relationship, especially if you were younger. I can find like in high school especially, the struggle is, people jump in a relationship just because there's a need, there's a want, right? It's like, I don't want to be lonely.
Yes.
I might not have friends, but maybe I can find all of that in this one person, right? And that might not necessarily be the most healthiest thing.
Yeah. And that kind of pressure, I think, again, looking back at my own experience, just because I wasn't of faith, it was almost normal that you just kind of dated someone. I think I mentioned that earlier, but it was just kind of normal. You dated someone, and sometimes it's because, especially as you get older, like so more high school, you may feel like you want like a more closer intimacy with someone. And so, like sometimes cuddling is nice. And so maybe you're thinking, maybe that's something that I want to kind of do with this person.
Right.
And so, talking about, again, prudency, like what are my intentions behind being with this person, right?
Definitely. Yeah, I think it definitely comes down to the why. Like, and I think that comes with maturity too, right? Because it's harder because like, right now, I think where we're at in our lives, we're able to ask the question, like, what is my motive behind this? But I think if you're younger, and I'm not trying to bash anyone here, like if this is your situation and you're either in a relationship that might not be healthy, or you're in a relationship and you think it's great, I just think with maturity you'll come to understand that you'll come to understand rather that like whether or not this is something that is prudent or not.
Yeah, we're not telling anyone what to do here. Like I had a few relationships before I came to faith and before we started being together, and God can use things, right? So and just in general, like, you go through your own life. It's your story, and we're not telling anyone what to do. Just
definitely. Yeah. But I'd definitely say if there was like one takeaway from this part of the episode, I think always question, right? And it's a good thing to question, and not in a sense like question whether you should be in a relationship or not, but question even your own motives. Like, what am I trying to gain from this relationship? Is this relationship something I want to invest in, or like, do I see this going somewhere? Yeah. And even at a young age, you can start to ask yourself those questions. Yeah,
as a general sense. Yeah, there's a general sense even outside of relationships. Definitely. Like, like who am I? Again, that's we already talked about that.
Right.
Like, who am I? What do I want? Like, what are my intentions?
Definitely. So I kind of want to segue a little bit into friendships as well. So like not necessarily romantic relationships, but just friendships with other people. But also like I think there's importance in, like, for myself as a guy, really investing in other friendships with other guys, right? Like this is something I wish I had. I think it was probably my last semester of high school before I graduated where I found a good group of guys where I could actually talk about my faith with. My Christian faith was something I really kept to myself all throughout high school up until that point. And when I finally found those, and it was only just a few people, and one of them has already been on this podcast, Mark Saldana. A little shout out to you, buddy. Like just finding these people in your life who you can relate to and journey with, I think is very important. Because it doesn't always have to be in romantic relationships. You can definitely open up, and you should be opening up, especially to your brothers if you're a guy, and your brothers in Christ rather, and likewise for a lady, you should be opening up to the other women in your life, right? Which is important. Where things get complicated is when, and I've definitely struggled with this in the past, where I've opened up to other women or other girls in my life, and maybe certain parts of my life that I shouldn't be talking to another woman about, right? And with maturity comes to understanding of there's only certain things you should be opening up about to the opposite sex. Right?
Yeah. Do you want to break that open a little bit, Dan, just so
sure.
our listeners can kind of understand? Because I think, again, if that's not something that you would have heard of before, right? I think it's very normal nowadays to have relationships like men and women are good friends, and there's nothing wrong with me being friends with a guy or being friends with a girl. Yeah. But maybe breaking open, like what does that look like, to be a bit mindful of how you open up to the other sex.
Yeah, so I think like especially when it comes to brokenness, because I think we all have different parts of our life that we either hide from anyone else, we kind of keep to ourselves, especially those parts of us that are not perfect, right? And so when it comes to that, I think it's important to first of all share that with somebody, right? But then secondly, knowing who to share it with. Yeah. And I think that's where other brothers, at least for me, being a guy, comes into play, where it's important for me to share those with guys I trust. But what happens when I share this specific information with somebody who might not be a guy is I'm opening up my heart to something that might not be there, right? In a sense, I'm opening up my heart to a woman who might be seeing that as an opportunity to jump in to fix things, or to be that ear to listen to some of my hurt. And all of a sudden I'm kind of creating this relationship that might not be healthy.
Right.
Does that make sense? I don't know if you want to jump in.
Yeah, I think I know what you're saying. I think I want to add it creates an intimacy, is I think how I would put it. It creates an intimacy that may open up something else, like right. Let's say I'm opening up to a guy and it's creating intimacy that maybe shouldn't be there. So let's say, for example, we're married. So if I do that to someone else, that may create an open intimacy that shouldn't be there between me and another man.
Right.
I see what you mean, and thanks for opening that up a bit more.
And I do want to clarify too. It's not to say that you shouldn't open up like to another woman or another guy if you're like if you're in a dating relationship. Like you should be doing that. Like that's a normal thing, and that I would encourage that, right? Like open up, like talk about some of the hard stuff if you want to. But I think most specifically in a friendship, a non-romantic relationship, there are certain things that you'd reserve. Yeah. And I think it's prudent to do that.
Like if the intent of the relationship is to be friends, yet you open up in ways that you wouldn't really open up unless you're kind of dating someone, then that could open up something else.
Yeah, and that can also lead somebody on thinking like, oh, maybe there's interest, like this guy's opening up his heart to me.
Or
like
vice
maybe
versa.
Or maybe like there's a sense of like maybe he wants this intimate, like this intimacy with me.
Creates confusion. Right? Creates confusion. Sure. Yeah, it could create confusion. Yeah.
That's great, because that kind of takes us to our next little segment here on the topic of dating. I want to kind of talk about like people who are in a relationship who might be dating. Maybe this is after high school, or you're in university, you're working, like whatever the context is. I just want to briefly just touch on a few things in regards to dating, if you will. So a little disclaimer: we're not perfect. I mean, we're married, and we have a little kid on the way, a little baby boy coming your way July 5th, 2022. But anyway, all that to say, we're not perfect in our relationship either, in our marriage. But we've had our fair share of mistakes, and we're constantly learning and growing together, but also individually. And so all that to say, take all of this as you will, but we just want to share a little bit about maybe, like what our journey was like dating, and some of the mistakes that we might have made. Sure. And like what that looks like. And so I think when it comes to dating, I think of one common mistake that men especially make. Okay. We tend to linger on and lead a woman on without the intention of even dating, right? It's a common like, oh, I like spending time with this person, but I don't see a potential future, right? And that can be a huge struggle, especially to a woman. Like, what's your perspective on that?
Yeah, I would agree. I would also say that women can do it too. Except I think not that I think it's less obvious, but yeah, I would agree. You touch a little bit more on that, and I can maybe share a bit more of my thoughts. But
yeah. I think for a man, if like your intention is to have a relationship or to find to like literally go on a few dates and maybe see if there's something here, like I think your first step is go on that date, ask her out, right? Like don't wait, just ask her out. You know, what's the worst that can happen? You go on a date and you figure out maybe this is not something I want to invest in. It
can be a little awkward, but
it might be a little awkward at worst, but at best it's like at least you know, right? Instead of I think leading somebody on, and that's not always the case, but I think as I'm a man, so I can only speak for men here, but I think we have that tendency to lead someone on, to lead a woman on. So
I think I can see a bit more what you're saying now. I think I would have definitely had guys that kind of seemed interested, but there wasn't much defining over like what the relationship was, and it's like we were friends, but we felt like there were feelings there, and it was very confusing. Right. And yes, I think to the woman's heart, it's like, well, yes, we want to be pursued, right? So like, and I think we want clarity. Like we want the guy to be clear with his intentions and not kind of just not really express what he wants. And that can be difficult.
Right. Yeah. I think we kind of found that in our relationship too, when we initially met, and we were good friends. We started, and like praise God that our friendship turned into something beautiful. But for us too, I think there was that confusion of like, should we date, should we not? And part of that was on my fault too, because I wasn't I wasn't bold in asking you out on a date at first. It took me a while to get to that point where, you know, and I think for me as a guy, it was like I was afraid of rejection, right? I was afraid like, what if this doesn't go somewhere? And this idea that I didn't want to lose what was already here. And that can often be a fear for us guys, where, you know, if there is a friendship there, we don't want to risk that friendship or something that might not be there.
I remember you saying that, and actually you were afraid to mess up our friendship. We did go through a little bit of that, but it wasn't like it wasn't leading on, but I think both of us were trying to discern, right? Like we talked about earlier, like trying to be intentional, right? Like I think we didn't want to date each other if we weren't intentional. We didn't see like that outcome, right? It's like, so I think it took us a while because we really had to pray and discern, like, okay, like what do we want out of this relationship? Right. And we wanted to protect one another's heart. And so that kind of touches a bit on the earlier topic. So very important.
And prudency is key. Prudency is key in everything. But you touched on determining the relationship. I think that's important too. That's another mistake. Not a mistake, but I think a concern when it comes to relationships, where, you know, you might have gone on a couple of dates, and maybe at least from the guy's perspective, there's interest there, and like you see a potential relationship with this person, but you don't define the relationship. You don't make that next commitment, whether that's like asking her to be your girlfriend, right? Like defining that, or saying like, I think we're exclusive now. Like that, like making that actual commitment, whatever that is, or wherever you are in that in the context of that relationship. I think it's important to define it, because if you don't, there's confusion between the two of you, and there's this like unknown of like, am I being pursued? Is this something that the other person feels is worth investing in, or should I be like, you know what I mean? Like the sense of, should I keep opening up, or should I reserve myself? Like, what's going on here? There's a lot of confusion sometimes.
It's that same concept of confusion, right? Like, at least what we did do at the beginning, if it was confusing when we were friends, we were trying to figure it out, at least we determined that. We talked about it. We constantly kind of came, not constantly, but we came together and we talked about it, you know, like, where are we at? Like, what, you know, and we were able to have those conversations to be able to know like a bit more. I was able to understand your heart, and you were able to understand my heart, and saying like, this is where Rissa's at, this is where Dan's at, and that helped us, you know, because if you don't have those conversations, you don't know where the other person's at, and honestly, like, I know that would drive me insane.
Definitely.
Like, you didn't know.
Sure. And often it's hard to have those conversations.
It
but
is.
They need to happen.
Yeah, they are hard. Yeah, because you have to be kind of a bit vulnerable.
Yeah.
That can be tough,
Definitely.
but worth it.
100%. Yeah. So I also want to wrap this up by touching on honoring each other. I think, and when I say honoring, I mean doing something nice, doing something that really reflects who they are, right? And so, like when you say to honor somebody is to bring them up, to lift them up, right, as a person, to reflect who they are. And so, you don't have to be married or in a relationship to honor somebody, right? Like you can honor your brothers, you can honor your sisters. Like for us, honoring could be as simple as, in a marriage, like literally taking some time to tell Rissa how beautiful she is, right? Or, do you have any examples? Rissa?
Yeah, this was making me think of the time when we were still friends and trying to determine the relationship. And I had gotten my wisdom teeth out. And you actually were around quite a bit, trying to like take care of me, which I thought that was a beautiful way of honoring me. And also, I think it was around Valentine's Day, because I think like a couple days ago, you had left some roses at my door with like a card or something like that.
Right.
We weren't even dating. And I mean, like, again, it could cause confusion, but we were determining the relationship. We were talking about, what we wanted and where our hearts were at. So it didn't feel confusing. It felt to me like you were just trying to honor me and show me love, like show that you cared, show that you were thinking of me. And that was a really beautiful way to honor me. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, but I think honoring can be as simple as just affirming somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you want to go as fancy and get someone flowers, like that's
we love that, by
beautiful
the way.
But it doesn't have to be that complicated or hard.
Yeah.
Just something as simple as just affirming somebody and saying like, hey, like, or like even if it's some of your friends, some of your guy friends, like, and you're shooting hoops, like around a basketball court, like affirm the guys, man. Like be like, hey, dude, like that's sick. Like I wish I could shoot hoops like that. Or it's just affirmation can go a long way.
Yeah.
Especially in the context of a marriage or a relationship that's pretty serious, maybe a discerning marriage, honoring each other and doing little things for each other, can go a long way.
Yeah. And get to know what each other like too, and then you can honor them best when you're, giving them something that they love. Yeah,
definitely. All right, well, that seems like a good spot to wrap things up. So thank you so much, Rissa, for being a part of this episode with me.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. It was a pleasure to have you here. And thanks guys for tuning in. We hope this may have inspired you in some way or form, or if it didn't, I'm glad you still stuck around. This is great to record, especially with my wife.
Great discussion.
Yeah,
thanks.
That's
Dan.
awesome. Cool. Well, God bless and take care. This is definitely going to bloopers.
Yes.
All right. No, not all right. All right. Step right up. First come, first serve.
First come, first serve.
I don't know.
Hosting some kind of soup kitchen or?
Yeah. This is the best soup in town.